Hello, I'm Dilek Tuna and you're watching A News. Let's see the top stories this hour. European leaders criticise Israel's expanded military operations in southern Lebanon. IAEA Director General Grossi warns of a nuclear risk after a reported drone strike on Zaporizhzhia power plant. And Colombia's presidential race heads to a runoff after a first round triggers disputes. International pressure is mounting on Israel after its latest military advance in southern Lebanon drew criticism from key European allies. As Israeli troops expand operations beyond previous front lines, Lebanon is warning of a growing humanitarian crisis and the risk of further regional escalation.
European leaders are voicing concern over Israel's latest military escalation in southern Lebanon, following the capture of new strategic positions and an expansion of ground operations against Hezbollah. The UK, France and Germany have criticised the move, while France has requested a United Nations Security Council meeting to discuss the situation. Lebanon's Prime Minister Nawaf Salam accused Israel of carrying out a scorched earth policy and imposing collective punishment on civilians in the south. The Israeli military has issued new evacuation warnings covering a large area south of the Zaranny River. The IDF says it is targeting Hezbollah infrastructure in Tyre and other locations, and warned that anyone near Hezbollah positions could be at risk. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said troops have crossed beyond the Litani River and secured key positions.
I instructed the IDF to expand the maneuver in Lebanon. Our forces crossed the Litani River. They seized controlled areas. They occupied the Beaufort Ridge. And now my instruction is to deepen and expand our grip on the places that were under Hezbollah's control.
Defense Minister Israel Katz said Israeli forces will remain at the site as part of what Israel calls a security zone in southern Lebanon. The capture of Beaufort marks the first time Israeli forces have held the site since their withdrawal from southern Lebanon in 2000. Israel says the operation is aimed at protecting communities in northern Israel from future attacks. Hezbollah has not yet commented on the latest advances. Meanwhile, Lebanon's health ministry says at least 3,371 people have been killed and more than 10,000 injured since March 2nd as the conflict continues to intensify.
Oil prices rose more than 2% in early trading on Monday after Israel moved troops deeper into Lebanon. US crude climbed to nearly $90 a barrel and Brent crude rose above $93. The military move came despite a ceasefire that has been in place for more than 6 weeks between Israel and Lebanon. And despite fresh military exchanges between Washington and Tehran, President Trump says Iran wants a deal and insists an agreement could benefit the United States and its allies. But with tensions in the Strait of Hormuz and political pressure mounting at home, the path to diplomacy remains uncertain.
Iran is eager to reach a deal with the United States, despite escalating military tensions between the two countries. That is according to President Donald Trump. In a post on Truth Social, Trump said Iran really wants to make a deal, and that any agreement would be good for the United States and its allies. His comments came just hours after the U.S. military confirmed strikes on Iranian military sites over the weekend. According to U.S. Central Command, the operation targeted radar systems, drone control facilities, air defenses, and attack drones in southern Iran after Tehran allegedly shot down a US MQ-1 drone flying over international waters. The U.S. said no American personnel were injured. Iran's Revolutionary Guard responded by saying it had targeted a U.S. base and accused Washington of increasing instability in the region. The latest exchanges come amid ongoing efforts to end the 3-month conflict. Trump acknowledged that political debate surrounding the crisis is making negotiations more difficult. At home, the president is facing pressure to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and lower fuel prices ahead of November's congressional elections, while also confronting criticism from hardliners opposed to any concessions to Iran. Meanwhile, U.S. Central Command says 118 commercial vessels have been redirected during the blockade. Iran's Revolutionary Guard says dozens of ships have continued to pass through the Strait of Hormuz under its protection.
Iran's Foreign Minister Zaporizhzhia has said mediated negotiations with the US as well as exchanges of proposals and counter-proposals are continuing amid a shaking ceasefire at the Strait of Hormuz. Zaporizhzhia reports.
The Iranian Foreign Minister Zaporizhzhia confirmed that indirect talks with the US and mediated exchange of proposals on an extended ceasefire are going on, saying that the news about reaching a deal are speculations, rejecting the reports suggesting an agreement on terms of a draft between Tehran and Washington. He said on Sunday that until the talks resulted in a concrete outcome, it would not be possible to say that an agreement has been achieved. Following reports that the US has forwarded its comments on Iran's latest proposal, he stressed everything that has been said so far about the Iran-US talks is speculation. Meantime, Parliamentary Speaker Mohammad Baqir Ghalibaf said any agreement would only be accepted after tangible gains for Iran are secured. Speaking in a virtual parliamentary session, Iran's chief negotiator in the indirect talks with the US said, "Until we are certain that we have secured the rights of the Iranian nation, we will not approve any agreement." In a related development, the semi-official Tasnim news agency close to the Revolutionary Guards quoted an informed source familiar with the Iran-US negotiations as saying that Tehran is completely prepared for a no-understanding situation with Washington, saying that US President Donald Trump's new amendments to Iran's draft do not mean Tehran will accept them. The unnamed source added, as a rule, Iran will make its own amendments. Amid news on exchange of proposals, Iran's Revolutionary Guard said on Monday it targeted a US airbase, which was used as the source of an attack on a telecom facility on the Sirik Island near the strategic waterway of the Strait of Hormuz. The renewed encounter came after a short lull in the military standoff between Iran and the US at the waterway connecting the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, following 2 rounds of trading attacks in 72 hours last week. Zaporizhzhia from downtown Tehran for A News.
Russia and Ukraine have launched fresh attacks on each other's military and energy infrastructure, while renewed concerns have emerged over the safety of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, following a reported strike at the site.
Russia said on Sunday that its forces launched massive strikes on Ukrainian military targets over the past 24 hours. The Russian Defense Ministry said in its latest report that the Russian forces launched attacks on Ukrainian drone assembly and launch sites, fuel storage bases, ammunition depots, energy and transport facilities of Ukrainian forces, as well as positions of Ukrainian troops and foreign mercenaries. The ministry also said that the Russian air forces shot down 405 Ukrainian drones. On the same day, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine said its troops carried out an overnight strike on the Saratov oil refinery in southwestern Russia. The oil refinery is a key Russian fuel infrastructure with a designed annual refining capacity of 7 million tons. In addition, Ukrainian forces also attacked targets such as an oil pumping station in Russia's Kirov region and a large oil storage facility in Rostov region on the same day. The operator of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant says the site was reportedly hit on Sunday, damaging a transport workshop and several vehicles. No injuries were reported. The Ukrainian Defense Forces, however, have officially denied Russia's accusations of a drone attack on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, calling it another informational provocation. Meanwhile, International Atomic Energy Agency Director General Rafael Grossi expressed serious concern over the reported strike, warning that attacks on nuclear facilities are like playing with fire. The Zaporizhzhia plant, one of Europe's largest nuclear power facilities, has been under Russian control since March 2022.
ASEAN Secretary-General Kao Kim-hoon says he's optimistic that ASEAN and China can conclude negotiations on a long-awaited South China Sea Code of Conduct this year. Negotiations on the Code of Conduct began in 2017, building on the 2002 Declaration on the Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea. Speaking at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, Kao said both sides remain committed to finalising the agreement, describing it as being in the interests of both ASEAN and China.
This year, what is important also I want to highlight is that this is the 5th anniversary of ASEAN-China Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, and we have to do a lot of activities. We have been negotiating for the COC since 2017, and the goal, of course, to conclude the COC negotiations within this year. Our member states on the ASEAN side in China have been working very hard together to conclude the COC, and I believe that we have a lot of confidence. I have a lot of optimism that we will be able to conclude this. It's for the interest of ASEAN and China to have the COC concluded. I think there's a commitment and there's interest there.
And in other news from the Pacific, flights and ferries in Japan's Okinawa prefecture were cancelled as a severe tropical storm approached on Monday. Jangmi, as the storm has been named, was expected to bring heavy rain and strong winds to Japan's southwest, with the Japan Meteorological Agency forecasting gusts of up to 160 kilometers per hour. Naha Airport, Okinawa's main international and domestic gateway, would remain closed on Monday, airport authorities said. The approaching storm also forced cancellations of ferries and cut power to over 7,000 households, Japan's national broadcaster NHK reported. Over to Latin America now. The battle for Colombia's presidency is intensifying after preliminary results put right-wing outsider Abelardo de la Espriella ahead of the first round of voting. As no candidate surpassed the 50% threshold required to win outright, de la Espriella said the left-wing candidate Ivan Cepeda are set to advance to a runoff election on the 21st of June.
Right-wing outsider Abelardo de la Espriella has emerged as the front-runner in Colombia's presidential election and is set to face left-wing Senator Ivan Cepeda in a second-round vote later this month. De la Espriella celebrated the result with supporters in Barranquilla, where he launched a fierce attack on both President Gustavo Petro and his political ally Ivan Cepeda.
You, Mr. Gustavo Petro, and you, Mr. Ivan Cepeda, are a couple of criminals whom we will send into retirement forever. Petro is a criminal and has said he doesn't recognize the results, which have been decisive. A call to the security forces, to the army of the homeland, to activate the constitutional mechanism in the event that this criminal, drug-addicted and miserable man tries to ignore the will of the Colombian people.
The result, however, has quickly become the subject of controversy. President Petro says he does not accept the preliminary count, arguing that only the final results certified by judicial scrutiny commissions should be considered valid. In a post on social media, Petro questioned discrepancies in the electoral roll and raised concerns about changes made to the counting system. Cepeda has also urged caution, saying his campaign will wait for the official review process before recognizing the outcome.
The President of the Republic has just spoken clearly about one of those situations. There is a discrepancy that we want to verify regarding the electoral roll, and that is not just any discrepancy. We are talking about 885,000 people, or IAEA numbers.
Despite the dispute, preliminary results placed de la Espriella in first place with more than 43% of the vote, ahead of Cepeda on just under 41%. The two candidates are now expected to face off in a highly polarized runoff campaign, with security, governance and the future direction of the country likely to dominate the contest.
After the break, we'll discuss the latest developments involving Israel, Lebanon, Iran, and the wider regional implications. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. Israeli forces have crossed the Litani River and reportedly captured the Beaufort fortress, a strategically significant position in southern Lebanon, as Israel expands its ground operations near the Lebanese border. And the developments come amid ongoing negotiations between the United States and Iran over a possible memorandum of understanding, with reports suggesting Washington's still seeking amendments related to nuclear materials and maritime security around the Strait of Hormuz. Joining me now to discuss is Matthew Zaporizhzhia, former US diplomat from Istanbul, Turkey. Matthew, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Ilikia. Very nice to be with you.
Now, Israeli forces have crossed the Litani River and reportedly captured the Beaufort fortress. How important is that, and how do you analyze these developments militarily and politically?
I think it's quite significant. If you recall, for example, that from 1982 until 2000, Israel held the Beaufort fortress during its occupation of southern Lebanon. So by reoccupying that fortress, it would suggest that Israel is planning to stay in southern Lebanon for a while. And in fact, as you said, has moved beyond the Litani River. The Litani River was the dividing line in an agreement negotiated by my friend Amos Hochstein in the Biden administration, north of which Hezbollah was supposed to retreat, and south of which Israeli forces were supposed to stay as long as Hezbollah didn't cross the Litani River and fire on Israeli territory. So now Israel has essentially said, we no longer abide by that agreement, and we're going to occupy southern Lebanon and bomb Beirut, as was just announced in recent hours by Prime Minister Netanyahu. So this is militarily quite significant in that the Beaufort Castle occupies high ground. It's on a cliff about 900 plus feet above the Litani River. From that vantage point, you can see into the strategic Bekaa Valley and all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. So it is sort of the epitome of the proverbial high military ground from which someone who holds it can defend themselves quite substantially.
And the timing's notable, Matthew, given ongoing US-Iran negotiations. Could Israel be attempting to shape facts on the ground before any broader diplomatic arrangement emerges?
100% yes. There's supposed to be a Security Council, UN Security Council discussion of Israel and its military operation in Lebanon later today. Also, Prime Minister Netanyahu knows that all the way through this U.S.-Israeli war on Iran, Iran has demanded as one of its core conditions for ending the war that the war ends everywhere, meaning that Israel stops attacking in Lebanon as well. Prime Minister Netanyahu and then his most extreme right-wing cabinet members, National Security Secretary Ben-Gvir and Finance Minister Smotrich, have been fighting against Netanyahu accepting that provision. So I think President Trump has been going up and back with Prime Minister Netanyahu and trying to persuade Netanyahu not to continue the operation in southern Lebanon. And Netanyahu, apparently with some success, has been arguing back to President Trump that, well, Israel must continue its operation to eliminate the threat of Hezbollah in southern Lebanon because the Lebanese military is unable to do so, even if it's willing to try to help.
And there are suggestions that Washington may be giving Israel time to establish a buffer zone in southern Lebanon before finalizing an agreement with Iran. How credible is that interpretation?
I think that's credible, Tileki. That's what I was just getting at. I think that one reason President Trump a couple of days ago, I guess it was on Friday, as I recall, when word leaked out that the U.S. and Iran were very close to an agreement, Trump said, I need a couple of days to consider it. And I think that meant he wanted to consult with Prime Minister Netanyahu. And reports have just come out that U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio had a phone conversation just now with Prime Minister Netanyahu. And so obviously they were discussing Israel's military operation in Lebanon. And given that Netanyahu followed that phone conversation with Rubio by saying Israel is now preparing to attack neighborhoods in southern Beirut, it would suggest that the Trump administration certainly didn't try to veto Prime Minister Netanyahu's attempt to expand Israel's buffer zone while these diplomatic talks between Iran and the United States continue.
And Matthew, how likely is Hezbollah to escalate in response to deeper Israeli ground operations beyond the Litani River?
That's the big question. We should recall that it was Hezbollah who launched attacks on Israel after the U.S. attacked and Israel attacked Iran. There was hope on the part of the U.S. and Israel that Hezbollah would not join that war. It chose to. So Hezbollah already escalated. Now, for the last, since the so-called ceasefire, I think of April 6th, or at least in early April, between Israel and Lebanon that was brokered in Washington, D.C., there have been many Israeli attacks on Lebanese territory, missile and aircraft bombing attacks, and Hezbollah has responded with missile strikes. It had been conventional wisdom by many observers that Israel's earlier attacks on Hezbollah in Lebanon had destroyed much of, if not all of Hezbollah's missile capabilities. But apparently Hezbollah retains significant capabilities and is using them. So how much Hezbollah will escalate now as Israel pushes further into Lebanon depends on how many of those tens of thousands of Hezbollah missiles remain.
Okay, and Trump reportedly wants additional amendments now regarding nuclear materials and the Strait of Hormuz. Does this suggest negotiations remain more fragile than public messaging implies?
No, I don't think so. I mean, all the way through, President Trump has, one thing he's been consistent on is that he demands that Iran not have a nuclear weapon. That was before this United States attack on Iran. In fact, it goes, we recall last June when there was a massive U.S. strike on Iran's nuclear facilities. It's something President Trump has said since his reelection, even going back to his first term, he wouldn't permit Iran to have a nuclear weapon. And it's been clear that one of his core demands, he said it publicly, is that Iran give up what he calls its nuclear dust, which means the 400 or so kilograms of enriched Iranian uranium that were buried in recent U.S. attacks, and that Iran dismantle its centrifuge program, and that it pledged not to ever develop nuclear weapons. Now, Iran has made that pledge not to develop nuclear weapons, but the rest of those things being discussed, the return of the uranium enrichment and dismantling of the uranium capabilities, is something the Iranian regime has rejected. So that's a core element in the next phase of negotiations that will happen if this ceasefire, phase one of the agreement, in other words, is extended by 60 days.
Okay. And Lebanon increasingly risks becoming a battlefield shaped by wider regional calculations here. How vulnerable is the country to being pulled deeper into the broader confrontation?
Well, as we've been discussing, it already is pulled in, right? I mean, Israel has, again, moved north of the Litani River. It's told residents of those areas, first it was north of the Litani River, now further north, to evacuate their homes. Nobody knows if they'll ever be able to go back. Israel has started attacking towns and villages and destroying them. And as we said, Israel is planning, it appears, to attack southern Beirut today. So I think Lebanon's been drawn into this already, into this conflict. And I know the government of Lebanon has, for the first time, credibly said that we really want to end Hezbollah's attacks on Israel, but it's unable to do so. So I think the war of Israel on Lebanon is going to continue for a while until Israel feels it's established a sufficient zone of security to protect its north from Hezbollah attacks. And who knows when that will be, or whether Israel can even accomplish that through its own military operations. That's a very difficult goal to achieve.
Mm-hmm. And one final question, Matthew. To what extent are domestic political considerations in Israel, Iran, and the US influencing the timing and behavior of all sides?
I think in Israel, the domestic political calculation is motivating Netanyahu strongly. He has elections coming up in October. He wants to keep the war going until then because it's quite popular in Israel in general, across the political spectrum. Israelis do not want to be threatened by Hezbollah and view Hezbollah as a terrorist organization. In addition, of course, Prime Minister Netanyahu sees an advantage in keeping the war open to prevent his own corruption trial from moving forward. But when it comes to the United States and Iran, I don't think domestic politics are playing much of a role, at least at this point. In Iran, this is an existential war, right? It's all about the survival of the regime, the clerical regime. And so the leadership, as much as the population may be weary of war and all the economic hardship that prompted nationwide protests brutally repressed by the regime last December and January, the regime in power and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps sees a need to keep the war going as a matter of its own continued existence. In the United States, there is an upcoming political boundary on President Trump, which is the midterm elections in November, the elections to the U.S. Congress. But there's still many months until then. And for President Trump, his motivation really does seem to be to make sure Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon and to reach some sort of a deal, being the consummate deal maker in his own mind with the regime in Tehran.
Matthew, it's always a pleasure having you on A News. Thank you for your analysis.
Thank you, Dilika. Honor to be with you.
After the break, we'll take a look at key stories shaping the region. Welcome back to A News, and now we turn to our regional stories. Azerbaijan's role in global energy security and regional connectivity is in focus as Baku Energy Week gets underway. The event has brought together government officials, investors and industry leaders from dozens of countries. Our correspondent Andy Mioch reports.
Hello from the buzzing Expo Center in the Azerbaijani capital. Baku Energy Week is officially underway, gathering investors, industry leaders, business people and officials from 46 countries. Opening the Energy Week, Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev spoke of his country's development over the past 3 decades, and he outlined some key economic parameters there, but one of his key messages was that countries should not be judged for having oil and gas, as those are just like any other commodity. They should rather be viewed through the lens of what they use the funds they get from fossil fuels for and where they invest them. Aliyev spoke of his country's exports, saying that Azerbaijan now supplies gas to 16 countries, 10 of which are members of the European Union. He also spoke of the green side of things, announcing that Azerbaijan will have a 2 gigawatt energy production in renewables by the end of next year. What followed at the opening ceremony were messages from U.S. President Donald Trump, from UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Those were delivered by officials of the 3 respective governments. In the message from the American President, Trump congratulates Azerbaijan for its role in securing energy for the world, but he particularly focuses on a shared commitment on affordable and abundant energy, highlighting also the peace process between Azerbaijan and Armenia. He spoke in that message of the milestone hit in August last year when the leaders of Armenia, Azerbaijan and the United States met in the White House to work on the peace agenda. After a few more speeches, we saw a symbolic button-pushing ceremony that started the production of non-associated gas in the ACG field in Azerbaijan. That's one of the largest fields of its sort in the world. Then came the document signings. We've seen Azerbaijan's state oil company Sokar signed a number of agreements, memorandums and letters of intent with industry majors and other companies such as Shell, Total Energies, who else was there? Chevron. There was a company from Serbia there as well, and there was JP Morgan and so on. And to top it all off, in the end, an agreement was signed between the governments of the United States and Azerbaijan that covers, but is not limited to, critical minerals. Anyhow, the Baku Energy Week is now in full swing for 3 days. There's a lot of talks to be had, a lot of deals to be signed, and we'll bring you coverage from it all. For now, that's it.
The Minister of Defense of Azerbaijan, Colonel General Zakir Hasanov, held a meeting with the Prime Minister of Georgia, Irakli Kopakidze, in his visit to Tbilisi. The sides discussed the current state of bilateral cooperation as well as regional and international issues of mutual interest. They also underscored the importance of preserving peace and stability in the region and highlighted the strong strategic partnership and defence cooperation between Azerbaijan and Georgia. Georgia's State Security Service made 2 high-profile arrests, detaining 2 Georgian citizens on charges of spying for Russia and Iran. Both suspects are well-known public figures, and what authorities are alleging goes far beyond simple information leaks. Nini Nikolashvili reports.
Georgia's counterintelligence officers arrested Zaporizhzhia and Irakli Chikladze on the same day, just hours apart, both accused of passing sensitive intelligence to foreign services. Media reports indicate the countries involved are Russia and Iran, though the security service has not officially confirmed this yet. Zaporizhzhia is the founder of the Zaporizhzhia Institute, a pro-Russian NGO and one of the initiators of the recently created Russophobia Monitoring Council. He has previously appeared in Georgian investigative reporting, linking his organizations to Prav Fond, a group tied to the Russian Foreign Ministry. Authorities say he was working for 2 foreign intelligence services at the same time, using covert meetings, encrypted communications, and trips abroad, while also creating information platforms and organizing events on foreign instructions. The second detainee, Irakli Chikladze, is a journalist and founder of the Caucasus Human Rights Institute. Authorities allege he ran a full intelligence network under the cover of an online platform collecting information on Georgia's political, economic, and security landscape, distributing funds from foreign handlers to network members and coordinating their work. Both are charged under Article 314 of the Criminal Code, which carries 8 to 12 years in prison. Both men deny everything. Zaporizhzhia's lawyer said he found no grounds for the charges after reviewing the case materials, and his client links the arrest to his public activity around the Russophobia Monitoring Council. Chikladze's lawyer said the same thing, calling the evidence insufficient. The investigation is ongoing. Nini Nikolashvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan says Armenia will remain in the Eurasian Economic Union until a choice between the IAEA and the European Union becomes unavoidable. Pashinyan added any final decision on Armenia's direction must be made by the Armenian people through a referendum. He said holding such a vote now would be illogical, as Armenia has not officially applied for EU membership and is not close to receiving candidate status. Questions have emerged around international lawyer Robert Amsterdam following reports concerning his past professional communications and his current political and legal activities in Armenia. The allegations relate both to historical email records and to his ongoing public advocacy work in the region.
An international political scandal is unfolding around Western lawyer Robert Amsterdam, founder of Amsterdam & Partners LLP, after newly unsealed digital records published by the US Department of Justice showed 2016 communications involving Amsterdam, his firm, and the office of Jeffrey Epstein. The records have drawn renewed attention because of Amsterdam's current public role in Armenia, where he is representing Russian-Armenian businessman Samvel Karapetyan, defending the Armenian Apostolic Church, and criticizing the government of Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan. Amsterdam denies having any personal or professional relationship with Epstein, and has warned that he may pursue legal action against those who allege otherwise. The issue has become part of a wider political dispute in Armenia. Ruben Rubinyan, Vice President of Armenia's National Assembly, has publicly accused Amsterdam of links to Epstein. Amsterdam rejected the allegation and threatened a $10 million defamation lawsuit. The records published by the US Department of Justice do not, on their own, establish a personal relationship between Amsterdam and Epstein. However, they show documented contact involving Amsterdam, his firm, Epstein's office, and communications concerning a proposed engagement letter. According to the records, on April 26, 2016, Epstein's assistant emailed Epstein about a request from Amsterdam and his partner, Andrew Durkovic, who was seeking Epstein's direct contact information. Epstein approved the request. The same day, Epstein authorized adding Durkovic to a scheduled 1 p.m. meeting, and Epstein's staff confirmed the logistics with Amsterdam's office. After that meeting, Durkovic sent an email to Jeffrey Epstein, copying Amsterdam. In the message, Durkovic wrote, "Dear Jeffrey, pleasure meeting this afternoon. As promised, attached is a proposed engagement letter for Mr. Wade Sr.'s signature. Any questions, please let us know. Best regards, Andy." Amsterdam has said the proposed retainer did not create a legal or professional relationship with Epstein. In comments reported by News.am, he said the matter related to Kareem Wade, the Senegalese politician and son of former Senegalese President Abdoulaye Wade.
That we never even offered our services to Mr. Epstein. Mr. Epstein, in the one meeting I had about an African client, did raise the possibility of me working for him, and I declined.
Kareem Wade, a former Senegalese minister, was convicted on corruption-related charges and later pardoned in 2016 after a major political dispute involving international lobbying efforts. Another record published by the US Department of Justice shows that Amsterdam later contacted Epstein directly. "Dear Jeffrey, hope you are well. I am back in New York this Sunday through Tuesday. If you think it is worthwhile, I would be happy to meet with you. My very best, Bob." The email was signed by Robert Amsterdam of Amsterdam & Partners LLP. A News contacted Amsterdam by email seeking comment and clarification on the allegations and the documents cited in this report. No response had been received by the time of publication. A News also contacted a phone number attributed to Amsterdam via WhatsApp. In the exchange, a person using that number denied any personal involvement with Epstein and indicated that legal action could be taken against anyone making such a claim. The records have gained political significance because of Amsterdam's current role in Armenia, where he has emerged as a prominent critic of the Pashinyan government while representing Karapetyan. Karapetyan, the owner of Electric Networks of Armenia, faces charges including tax evasion, money laundering, large-scale embezzlement, and public calls to seize power. He denies wrongdoing. Karapetyan has also been named as a prime ministerial candidate by the Strong Armenia movement, although questions have been raised in Armenia over legal requirements relating to residency and citizenship. Amsterdam has taken a highly visible public role while representing Karapetyan. He has visited Yerevan, met Catholicos Garagin II, and supported detained church figures including Archbishop Bagrat Galstanyan and other clerics. In multiple interviews with Armenian media and on his social media, he repeatedly described the Armenian authorities' actions as attacks on religion and democracy, accusing the Pashinyan government of political repression and targeting opposition figures. He has also engaged in social media posts alleging ethnic cleansing in Karabakh. On multiple occasions, he has also criticized European officials and urged the EU and other international institutions to reassess their approach toward Azerbaijan and Armenia. Amsterdam has also focused heavily on the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict. He has criticized Azerbaijani authorities and called for the release of Armenian detainees in Baku, describing their detention as a violation of international law and conventions. During visits to Armenia and meetings with Catholicos Garagin II, Amsterdam linked the issue of detainees to what he described as broader threats against Armenia's security, Armenian identity, the Armenian Apostolic Church, and the Armenian people. He has criticized Azerbaijani authorities and called for the release of Armenian detainees in Baku, describing their detention as a violation of international law and conventions. Azerbaijani authorities reject those claims and maintain that the detainees were lawfully arrested, formally charged, and convicted by the Baku military court, following legal proceedings and the presentation of evidence in accordance with Azerbaijani legislation. While Amsterdam denies any personal connection to Jeffrey Epstein, the documents and related communications remain part of ongoing public and political discussion.
Kazakhstan may take custody of Iran's enriched uranium stockpile if an agreement is reached between Washington and Tehran over Iran's nuclear program. Our correspondent Fariza Kalimurzina reports.
Kazakhstan may take custody of Iran's enriched uranium stockpile if Washington and Tehran reach an agreement over Iran's nuclear program. The possibility was revealed by Rafael Grossi, head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, in an interview with the Financial Times. Grossi said the issue was discussed during his meeting with Kazakhstan's President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev in Astana. According to the nuclear watchdog chief, Kazakhstan could become a storage site because the country already hosts an International Atomic Energy Agency-controlled low-enriched uranium bank, making it equipped for the safe storage of nuclear materials. At the center of the discussions are around 440 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% purity. Its future remains one of the most sensitive and disputed issues in talks between Washington and Tehran. And according to the Financial Times, the stockpile is believed to be under the rubble of Iran's three main nuclear facilities in Natanz, Fordow and Isfahan, struck by the United States after Washington briefly joined Israel during the 12-day conflict with Iran in June last year. Estimates cited by the newspaper suggest that if enriched to 90% purity, the material could be enough to produce approximately 10 weapons. On May 26, President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev received Rafael Grossi in Astana and reaffirmed Kazakhstan's strong commitment to international efforts aimed at strengthening nuclear security. Tokayev also expressed Kazakhstan's readiness exclusively as a gesture of goodwill to assist in resolving the situation surrounding Iran's nuclear program, provided relevant international agreements are reached. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Central Asia is facing an unprecedented water shortage after 5 consecutive years of drought, with experts warning that rising temperatures and declining water reserves are increasing pressure on the region's water resources. Sevil Rajapova reports from Tashkent.
Central Asia is experiencing its most severe water deficit in decades, following 5 years of persistent drought. According to a new report by the European Commission's Joint Research Center, the period from 2021 to 2025 was the warmest recorded in the region since 1981, while soil moisture levels fell to historic lows. The report says countries including Uzbekistan have managed to mitigate some of the impact through irrigation. However, experts warn that groundwater reserves are being depleted faster than they can be replenished. In March 2026, temperatures in parts of Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan and northern Iran were recorded at up to 2.5 degrees Celsius above average. Although forecasts indicate wetter than normal conditions across Central Asia between April and June, specialists say the expected rainfall will not be enough to fully offset the effects of the prolonged drought. The finding comes as forecasts warn that summer 2026 could bring above-average temperature to Uzbekistan, increasing concerns over water security and climate-related challenges across the region. It is Sevil Rajap reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan A News.
Right after the break, we'll discuss Russia's latest comments regarding Armenia and the wider geopolitical implications for the South Caucasus. We'll see you shortly. Welcome back to A News. We now shift our focus to a regional story for discussion. Russia appears to be increasing pressure on Armenia ahead of upcoming parliamentary elections, with President Vladimir Putin warning of significant economic and social consequences should Yerevan move away from the Eurasian Economic Union. Among the measures mentioned were work permit requirements for Armenian migrants in Russia, stricter eligibility conditions for health insurance, higher transport tariffs and increased energy costs. Let's bring in our guest now for discussion. Ali Hussein Guluzadeh, expert on the South Caucasus, joins us from Rome, Italy. Ali Hussein, welcome to NewsHour.
Greetings. Thank you for the invitation.
Now, President Putin's comments come just days before Armenia's elections and include warnings about migration, transport and energy consequences. How likely is he to apply this level of political pressure?
In principle, given the apparent picture of Nikol Pashinyan and his civil contract party in the parliamentary elections scheduled for 7 June, it's unlikely that Yerevan will fundamentally alter its foreign policy regarding its engagement with the Eurasian Economic Union, of which it remains a member, and the European Union, toward which it's striving. The Russian side fully understands this and has repeatedly hinted at the probable consequences of Armenia's European integration. This message has been conveyed both by Russian officials and through state-controlled media. However, President Putin's statement can be characterized as the ultimate culmination in the form of ultimatum, let's say, directed at Yerevan. Consequently, in the medium term, Russia is likely to apply pressure in the spheres of migration, transport, and energy. This appears highly probable, although such measures would most likely be implemented gradually rather than all at once.
Now, the issue of Armenian migrant workers in Russia is sensitive socially and economically. How powerful a pressure point is that, specifically within Armenian domestic politics?
A significant Armenian diaspora has traditionally resided in Russia, with citizens of Armenian nationality actively engaged in many spheres of the Russian state. Naturally, the factor of labor migrants from Armenia, for whom Russia serves as a source of income and related activities, is considerable importance. Recent events are inevitably affecting this sensitive area. For instance, footage has appeared online showing Armenian users in Russian airports reporting rude treatment by Russian customs officials who directly accuse them of supporting Pashinyan. This constitutes a powerful lever indeed, one of the strongest available to Russia in its relations with Armenia.
Now, Moscow is warning Armenia about the costs of distancing itself from the Eurasian Economic Union. How realistic is it for Armenia to significantly reduce dependence on IAEA structures in the near term? Because Armenian Prime Minister Pashinyan has said that they will remain in the Union until a choice between the two, meaning EU, becomes unavoidable.
At present, I don't foresee any realistic prospects in the immediate future for Armenia to rapidly distance itself from Eurasian Economic Union. Such a move would currently be disadvantageous for Armenia and would entail serious consequences. It would be highly risky for the current authorities and for Pashinyan personally. Judging by the latest statements, which I read today morning of the Armenian Prime Minister, they don't want to leave Eurasian Economic Union. And it should be also noted about statements by Vice Prime Minister Mihail Grigoryan, who attended the most recent Eurasian Economic Union summit in place of Pashinyan. Armenia doesn't currently wish to reduce its level of participation in the Union. And I believe these statements reflect a genuine position rather than mere diplomatic maneuvering.
Okay, another point key to note here, Putin also argued that the Ukraine war began with attempts to align Kyiv with the EU. What message is Moscow trying to send to Armenia through that comparison?
The Russian side and Kremlin-affiliated media have repeatedly compared Pashinyan to Ukrainian President Zelensky many times. Most recently, comparisons have also been drawn with former Georgian President Mikhail Saakashvili. And in my assessment, Moscow is sending very clear signals to Yerevan regarding the potential challenges that Armenia and Pashinyan personally may face. While it would be premature to draw definitive conclusions, it's evident that such narratives from the Kremlin will continue to intensify.
Okay. Armenia's caught between competing geopolitical directions here, Russia, the West, and regional balancing. How hard is that position becoming for Yerevan strategically?
Armenia's current position is acquiring an expectationally high degree of strategic complexity. Yerevan finds itself squeezed between several competing geopolitical vectors, which requires the country's leadership to maintain a delicate balance of risks and opportunities under conditions of limited resources. On the one hand, substantial economic and infrastructural dependence on Russia persists. On the other hand, Armenia is consistently deepening its ties with the West. And in addition, the regional balance of power introduces a fourth layer of complexity. Normalization of relations with Azerbaijan and Turkey remains a priority, but continues to be relatively fragile, especially including prospects for the trade corridor. Relations with Iran require particular caution in view of Tehran's regional interests and recent developments. When all these factors are considered together, it becomes clear that in such a multipolar configuration, Yerevan must simultaneously take into account the positions of Moscow, Brussels, Washington, Ankara, Baku, and Tehran, while avoiding escalation in any direction. This is of critical importance. Thus, Yerevan's position is extremely complex and demands from the Armenian leadership a high degree of pragmatism, consistency, and capacity for multidimensional maneuver. Success will depend on the ability to diversify risks without allowing critical weakening of the economy or security during the transitional period.
Okay, Ali Hussein, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate your time and analysis.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's the news for this hour. Stay tuned to A News for all the latest developments.